I watched the deep red wine spread across the pristine white tablecloth like blood seeping through bandages, my trembling fingers still clutching the stem of the empty glass. The crimson liquid rushed toward James's side of the table, soaking into the edge of his perfectly tailored black suit jacket before I could summon the courage to reach for a napkin. His jaw clenched, those sharp angular features hardening into something cold and merciless. That vein in his temple began to pulse, the one that always appeared right before my world shattered into pieces. "I'm so sorry," I breathed, the words barely escaping my constricted throat as I frantically grabbed for the linen napkins near the breadbasket. My voice sounded pathetic even to my own ears, completely swallowed by the gentle piano music drifting through the restaurant's warm atmosphere. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to." "Of course you didn't mean to, Michelle." James's voice was smooth as silk, almost affectionate. The careful tone he always used in public when he needed everyone around us to believe we were a devoted couple celebrating our anniversary. But beneath the table, his hand shot out and seized my wrist with crushing force, his fingers digging deliberately into the exact spots where last week's bruises had only just begun fading from deep purple to that sickly yellow-green. "You never mean to do anything. You're so pathetic, Michelle. Can't even hold a glass properly without embarrassing me." Each word was delivered with his thumb pressing harder against the tender flesh of my inner wrist, and I bit down hard on the inside of my cheek to suppress any sound. Drawing attention would only make everything worse when we got home. It always made things worse. The restaurant around us continued its refined performance. The delicate clink of crystal against fine china, the sophisticated murmur of other diners' conversations, the rain that had begun falling steadily an hour ago now beating rhythmically against the tall windows framing the dim street outside. No one glanced in our direction. No one ever did. We were invisible in our misery. "It's only wine," I whispered, attempting to pull my arm free. But James's grip only intensified. "I'll pay for the dry cleaning." "With what money?" His smile broadened then, that charming expression he wore so well. Anyone observing us would think he was being playful, perhaps even romantic with his wife. "You don't have any money, remember? You barely earn $350 a week with those worthless freelance design projects. That doesn't even cover your share of the utilities." My share. As if I hadn't surrendered my savings account, my credit cards, my entire financial identity when he'd persuaded me to combine everything under his control 2 years ago. As if I hadn't stopped calling my sister Emma because he claimed she was trying to turn me against him. As if I possessed any existence beyond the suffocating prison he'd constructed around me. "James, please." My voice fractured slightly, and I despised myself for the vulnerability bleeding through. "People are watching." "No one's watching, sweetheart." But he released my wrist abruptly, leaning back in his chair with that same polished smile cemented on his face. "Try not to humiliate me again tonight. This place cost a fortune, and since I'm the one paying for it, the least you can do is show some goddamn gratitude." I nodded mutely, pressing my throbbing wrist against my stomach beneath the table where he couldn't witness my weakness. The restaurant truly was expensive. Montelacai's was one of those exclusive establishments where the menu deliberately omitted prices, and the waitstaff glided between tables with the practiced silence of people trained at far more prestigious venues. Rich mahogany paneling, ivory walls adorned with museum-quality paintings, tables positioned with enough distance that private conversations remained exactly that. Warm lighting from elegant wall sconces cast everything in a flattering amber glow, making everyone appear more beautiful than they actually were under harsh daylight. James had selected this place for our anniversary dinner, though I suspected his choice had nothing to do with celebrating our marriage and everything to do with the fact that several of his syndicate contacts dined here regularly. He'd been increasingly volatile all week, his temper hair trigger, disappearing until past midnight without explanation. Money was supposedly tight. At least that's what he told me when I discovered my freelance payments were being rerouted into his private account instead of the joint one we allegedly shared. When I'd questioned him about it this morning, he'd shoved me so hard I'd slammed into the kitchen cabinet door. Then he'd smiled and instructed me to dress nicely, because we were going out. So here I sat, wearing the fitted deep red dress with three-quarter sleeves he'd laid out on our bed. My long brown hair styled in the soft waves he preferred. My makeup carefully applied to conceal the exhaustion shadowing my eyes, the kind that comes from too many nights lying awake in the darkness, wondering how my life had contracted into something this claustrophobic, this terrifying. 25 years old, and I felt like I'd aged 15 years in the 3 since I'd married him. The waiter materialized with fresh linens and discreetly cleared away the wine-stained tablecloth without acknowledgement, too professional to recognize the tension crackling at our table. James ordered another bottle. Expensive, French, something with a pretentious name I didn't catch, and finally shifted his attention away from me as he surveyed the dining room. I used that precious moment to actually breathe, to let oxygen expand my lungs completely for the first time since we'd arrived. My wrist pulsed with dull pain, and I knew without checking that fresh bruises would bloom there by morning, overlapping the old ones. Long sleeves for another week. Maybe I'd tell Emma I had the flu again if she tried to visit. My gaze drifted past James's rigid shoulders to a table directly behind him, and my breath caught in my throat. A man sat there alone, his dinner apparently forgotten as he watched our table with unsettling focus. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with dark hair slicked back from a striking face that revealed nothing. No judgment, no sympathy, just cold calculation. He wore an immaculate all-black suit and black shirt, and despite his relaxed posture, hands resting calmly near his wine glass, there was something about him that radiated controlled power. Quiet authority. Danger. His forearms bore what looked like expensive tattoos disappearing beneath his cuffs. A sophisticated watch caught the light. Heavy rings adorned several fingers. Everything about him suggested wealth and influence, but more than that, violence held in check by sheer willpower. Our eyes met across the space between tables, and the world seemed to tilt slightly. He wasn't just observing the argument anymore. He was looking at me specifically, and the intensity of his dark, unreadable gaze made me feel simultaneously naked and strangely protected in a way that defied logic. For several heartbeats, neither of us looked away, and I experienced the unsettling sensation of being truly seen, not as an object of shame or possession, but as a person for the first time in 3 years. Not as James's perpetual disappointment, not as the woman who destroyed everything she touched, but as someone with worth, someone who deserved basic human dignity, someone who had the right to exist without constantly calculating which version of herself might prevent the next explosion. His expression remained unreadable, but something in those cold, calculating eyes shifted. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. And in that frozen moment, something wordless passed between us, an acknowledgement of the violence simmering just beneath the surface of my carefully constructed facade. Then James's voice cut through the moment, like a blade. "Are you even listening to me, Michelle?" I flinched, tearing my gaze away from the dark-haired stranger and forcing myself to focus on my husband's sharp features twisted with irritation. "Yes," I lied automatically, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Of course I am." But as James launched into some story about his work, lies probably like everything else, I could still feel those dark eyes on me from the table behind him. Watching. Waiting. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt the faintest spark of something I'd thought James had beaten out of me completely. Hope. Before we dive deeper into the story, take a moment to hit that like button if you love suspenseful, emotional stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next thrilling chapter. We also want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Whether it's your city, your country, or even just your favorite spot to watch these stories, we love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's get back to the story and see just how far courage can take someone when danger is closing in. James's phone buzzed against the table, the vibration loud enough to rattle his water glass. He snatched it up immediately, his expression darkening as he read whatever message had appeared on the screen. For a moment, I thought he might ignore it. He'd been obsessive lately about keeping up appearances in public, but then his chair scraped back with enough force to draw glances from the neighboring tables. "I need to take this," he said, already standing, his tone clipped and businesslike. He didn't wait for my response, just turned and strode toward the restaurant's entrance, phone pressed against his ear, his free hand already gesturing sharply as he began speaking to whoever was on the other end. I sat frozen in my chair, suddenly hyper-aware of my own breathing. The absence of his presence should have felt like relief, but instead it left me floating in a strange kind of limbo, not quite free, but temporarily unmoored from the constant vigilance his proximity demanded. My wrist still throbbed where his fingers had dug in, and I cradled it gently against my stomach, testing the tenderness of the bruised flesh. The restaurant continued its elegant symphony around me. Rain streaked down the windows in silvery ribbons. A couple 3 tables away laughed at something, the sound bright and genuine and so foreign to my own experience that it might as well have come from another planet entirely. Movement, in my peripheral vision, made me look up. The dark-haired man from the table behind James was standing now, and he was walking directly toward me. Not hurried, not hesitant, just purposeful, each step measured and deliberate. Up close, he was even more imposing than I'd realized. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of physical presence that seemed to compress the air around him. His black suit fit him perfectly, expensive fabric draped over what was clearly a powerful frame. Those dark eyes that had watched me earlier were fixed on my face now with an intensity that should have terrified me. Instead, I felt oddly calm. He stopped at the edge of our table, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. For a long moment, he didn't speak, just studied me with that same unreadable expression. Then his gaze dropped deliberately to my wrist, still pressed against my stomach, before traveling up to my arms where the 3/4 sleeves of my dress had shifted slightly, revealing the mottled yellow-green shadows of older bruises creeping out from beneath the fabric. "You don't know me," he said finally, his voice low and rough, the kind of voice that commanded attention without needing to be raised. "And you have no reason to trust me." I should have said something. Should have told him I was fine, that everything was under control, that he should mind his own business. All the practiced lies I'd perfected over the past 3 years. But the words stuck in my throat, trapped behind the sudden realization that this stranger saw exactly what everyone else had been carefully trained not to notice. He reached into his jacket pocket with a smooth, economical movement and withdrew a small business card. Plain black with silver lettering, no company name, just a phone number embossed across the center. He placed it on the white tablecloth between us with the kind of care someone might use when handling something fragile or dangerous. "When you're ready," he said, his eyes meeting mine again with that penetrating focus. No questions asked. No strings attached. I stared at the card, my heart hammering so hard I was certain he could hear it. "I don't." My voice came out barely above a whisper. "I don't understand." "Yes, you do." It wasn't cruel or dismissive. Just a simple statement of fact. His gaze flicked toward the restaurant entrance where James was still visible through the glass, pacing and gesturing angrily into his phone. You understand perfectly. He took a step back, giving me space, but the intensity in his expression didn't waver. That number reaches me directly. Day or night. If you need help, you call. If you need to disappear, you call. If you just need someone to answer the phone at 3 in the morning when you're not sure you can survive another hour, you call. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it, raw and desperate. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Something flickered across his face then, not quite sympathy, but something deeper and more complex. Pain, maybe, or recognition of pain. Let's just say I know what it looks like when someone's drowning, he said quietly. And I made a promise a long time ago that I'd never stand by and watch it happen again. Through the window, I could see James ending his call, shoving his phone back into his pocket with visible frustration. He would be back at our table in less than 30 seconds. The dark-haired man saw it too. He nodded once, a sharp, decisive gesture, then turned and walked back toward his own table with that same controlled grace. By the time James pushed through the restaurant door, the stranger was seated again, his attention apparently focused entirely on the wine glass in front of him. James dropped back into his chair with barely contained rage simmering beneath his carefully maintained composure. "Incompetent idiots," he muttered, then seemed to remember where we were. His expression smoothed into something approaching pleasant as he reached for his own wine. "Sorry about that. Business." "It's fine," I said automatically, my fingers closing around the business card on the table. In one smooth motion, I slid it into my lap, then tucked it into the small hidden pocket on the inside of my dress, a pocket I'd sewn there myself months ago for exactly this purpose, though I'd never imagined I'd use it for something like this. James didn't notice. He never noticed the small things, the tiny acts of rebellion that were all I had left. "Where were we?" he asked, taking a long drink of his wine. But I wasn't listening anymore. All I could feel was the slight weight of that card pressed against my ribs, right over my racing heart. A lifeline. A promise. A choice. Terrifying and impossible and maybe, just maybe, real. When I glanced toward the stranger's table one more time, those dark eyes were waiting. He didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't give any outward sign of acknowledgement. But somehow I knew he understood. "When you're ready," he'd said. The question now was whether I'd ever be brave enough to find out what ready actually meant. The rain had intensified by the time we left Montelukai's, transforming from a gentle patter into a relentless downpour that turned the elegant street into something dark and hostile. The valet had brought James's black Mercedes around, but we stood under the restaurant's awning for a moment, me shivering in my thin dress, him scrolling through his phone with that tight-lipped expression that meant someone had disappointed him. The business card felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric of my dress pocket. The dark-haired man, I still didn't know his name, had slipped it into my hand when James had gone to the restroom 15 minutes before we'd left. He'd materialized beside our table so quietly I'd nearly gasped, leaning down as if to retrieve a dropped napkin. "When you're ready," he'd murmured, his voice low and rough, pressing something small into my palm. No questions asked. No strings attached. Then he was gone, back to his own table before I could even process what had happened. I'd hidden the card immediately, my heart racing, not daring to look at it until I was safely locked in a bathroom stall. Black cardstock. Embossed gold lettering. Just a phone number, nothing else. No name. No explanation. I'd memorized the number anyway. Just in case. "Get in the car, Michelle." James's voice cut through my thoughts, sharp with irritation. I hurried to the passenger side, my heels splashing through puddles that soaked through to my skin. The leather interior was cold, and I pulled the seatbelt across my chest with shaking fingers, keeping my eyes fixed straight ahead as James slid behind the wheel. For exactly 30 seconds, there was only the sound of rain hammering against the windshield and the engine purring to life. Then James's fist slammed into the steering wheel. "Do you think I'm fucking stupid?" His voice was quiet. Deadly quiet. The kind of quiet that made my blood turn to ice. "What? I don't," I stammered, my mind racing through everything I'd done wrong tonight, trying to identify which mistake had triggered this. "Don't play dumb with me." He threw the car into gear, pulling away from the curb with enough force that I pressed back against the seat. "I saw you." "Saw me what?" The question escaped before I could stop it, genuine confusion bleeding through my fear. His hand shot out and grabbed the back of my neck, fingers digging into the base of my skull as he forced my head forward. Looking at other men. Flirting. Making eyes at that table behind us like some desperate whore. "I wasn't, James, I swear I wasn't flirting with anyone." The words tumbled out in a rush, panic making my voice high and thin. "I spilled the wine, and I was embarrassed. I wasn't looking at anyone." "You think I didn't notice?" He released my neck only to grab my chin, wrenching my face toward him even as he navigated through traffic. His eyes were wild now, pupils blown wide with rage. "You think I didn't see you staring at that table? Trying to get someone's attention? Deliberately embarrassing me in front of the entire fucking restaurant." "That's not what happened. Desperation made me bold. Stupid. I made a mistake. I apologized. I didn't do anything." "You made me look like a fool." His grip on my jaw tightened until tears sprang to my eyes. "Spilling wine everywhere like a clumsy child, then batting your eyes at strange men while I'm sitting right there. Do you have any idea how that makes me look? What people must think?" No one was even paying attention. I was paying attention. He shoved my face away with enough force that my head cracked against the passenger window. Stars burst across my vision. "I'm always paying attention, Michelle. I see everything you do. Every little attempt to humiliate me, to make me look weak." The car swerved as he took a corner too fast, rain making the tires slip on the wet pavement. My head throbbed where it had struck the glass, and I pressed my fingertips gently against the spot, checking for blood. "I'm sorry," I whispered, retreating into the familiar script that sometimes, diffused his anger. "You're right. I should have been more careful. I wasn't thinking." "You never think." His voice rose to a shout now, all pretense of control evaporating. "That's your problem, Michelle. You never think about anyone but yourself. Never consider how your actions affect me, how they make me look, what they cost me." "I do think about you." I tried again, but it was the wrong thing to say. "Shut up." The words came out flat and cold. "James, please, just let me explain." I said shut up. His hand left the steering wheel again, and I flinched violently, throwing my arms up to protect my face. The blow never came. Instead, his hand wrapped around my throat, not squeezing, not yet, just resting there like a promise, like a preview of what he could do, what he would do. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to that terrifying whisper, the one that meant he was past anger and into something far more dangerous. "Shut up or I'll make you." The threat hung in the air between us, more potent than any violence he'd already inflicted. Because we both knew he meant it. We both knew he could. I pressed my lips together, sealing them shut, and fixed my gaze on the rain-blurred windshield. My heart hammered so loudly, I was certain he could hear it. The business card seemed to pulse against my hip where it sat hidden in my pocket, a secret lifeline I didn't dare acknowledge. James's hand slowly released my throat, returning to the steering wheel as we turned onto our street. "That's better," he murmured, almost gentle now. See how much nicer things are when you remember your place. I said nothing, did nothing, became as small and invisible as possible while my mind repeated those words like a desperate prayer. When you're ready. No questions asked. No strings attached. The Mercedes pulled into our building's parking garage, the sound of rain finally muffled by concrete. James killed the engine, and we sat there in the sudden silence, his breathing harsh and mine carefully controlled. When you're ready. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But as James's hand found my wrist again, gripping, always gripping, I realized with crystalline clarity that ready or not, I was running out of time. When you're ready. Soon. I promised myself as we walked toward the elevator, his fingers bruising my arm. Very soon. Rodwell Scott had learned long ago that violence had a particular sound. Not the obvious crack of bone or the wet thud of flesh meeting flesh, but the silence that came before it, the held breath, the sudden stillness, the way a room contracted around fear like a fist closing. He'd heard that silence tonight at Montelukai's, watching the young woman across the restaurant freeze as her husband's hand wrapped around her wrist beneath the table. Now, 2 hours later, he sat in his private office on the top floor of a building his family had owned for 3 generations, amber whiskey untouched in the glass before him, studying the information his second-in-command had compiled with impressive speed. James Michael Tom, Marcus said, spreading photographs and documents across the mahogany desk. Age 31. Investment analyst at Meridian Financial, or at least that's what his tax returns claim. He tapped one of the photos, a candid shot of the blonde man leaving an office building. In reality, he's a mid-level money launderer for the syndicate. Handles their real estate transactions, cleans about $2 million a month through various LLCs and shell corporations. Rodwell picked up one of the documents, his expression unchanging as he scanned the financial records. How long? For years, give or take. He's good at it, keeps his head down, doesn't get greedy. Marcus paused, his weathered face creasing with concern. Boss, you know what this means. The syndicate's not going to appreciate us interfering with one of their people, even a low-level operator like Tom. Viktor Kozlov runs a tight ship. He doesn't tolerate outsiders touching his assets, and he definitely won't tolerate us extracting information from one of his launderers. I'm not interested in his business with a syndicate. Rodwell set the document down, his dark eyes cold. I'm interested in the woman. Michelle Rose. Marcus supplied, producing another set of papers. 25. Freelance graphic designer, primarily works with small businesses and startups. Married Tom 3 years ago. No criminal record, no red flags. She's clean. He hesitated. She's also probably terrified, given what we witnessed tonight. Rodwell's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only sign that Marcus's words had struck something beneath his carefully controlled exterior. He rose from his chair and moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the rain-soaked city, his reflection ghosting against the glass like a specter. Pull up everything, he said quietly. Financial records, social media, medical history, if you can get it. I want to know how deep this goes. Already done. Marcus pulled out his tablet, swiping through screens. Joint bank accounts, all under his control. Her freelance payments get deposited into an account he manages. She has no credit cards in her own name anymore, closed them all 2 years ago. Social media went dark around the same time. No posts, no activity. Her emergency contacts list only him. He paused. There's a sister, Emma Rose, lives about 40 minutes away. They used to be close based on old social media posts, but there's been no contact for over a year. Isolated, Rodwell murmured, more to himself than to Marcus. Classic pattern. Boss. Marcus's tone carried a warning. I know what you're thinking, and I'm telling you it's a bad idea. Getting involved with Tom means getting involved with the syndicate. We've maintained peace with Kozlov for 5 years. 5 years of profitable coexistence, no territorial disputes, no bloodshed. You pull his money launderer's wife out from under him. Even if Tom's a piece of shit who deserves worse than we could give him, Kozlov's going to see it as an act of aggression. Then he'll see it as an act of aggression. This could start a war. Then we'll have a war. Rodwell turned from the window, and Marcus took an involuntary step back from the cold fury in his boss's eyes. Do you know why I don't ignore situations like this, Marcus? Marcus nodded slowly. Sophia. The name hung in the air between them like a ghost. Rodwell moved to his desk, opening the bottom drawer to retrieve a photograph he kept there, never displayed, but never forgotten. A young woman with dark hair and a brilliant smile, frozen in a moment of happiness that had been extinguished too soon. Sophia Castellano, Rodwell said, his voice rough with old grief. My fiancée. 23 years old when her ex-boyfriend broke into her apartment and beat her to death because she dared to leave him. He set the photograph down gently. I was in Milan handling business for my father. She called me 3 days before it happened, told me Marco had been following her, that she was scared. I told her to file a police report. I told her I'd be home in a week. I told her she was overreacting. You couldn't have known. I should have known. The words came out sharp enough to cut. I saw the signs. I saw the fear in her voice. And I did nothing because it wasn't my problem, because I had more important things to handle, because I assumed someone else would help her. He picked up the photograph again, his thumb tracing the edge. I found her body when I came home. The police said she'd been dead for 2 days. 2 days she lay there alone because I was too busy building an empire to save the woman I loved. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You made a vow. I made a vow, Rodwell confirmed, returning the photograph to its drawer. Never again. Never another Sophia. I see a woman in danger, I act. I don't care about the cost, the risk, or the political complications. I will not stand by and do nothing while someone suffers the way she suffered. The woman tonight, Michelle, she might not want help. She might refuse to leave him. Then I'll make sure she knows the option exists. Rodwell pulled out his phone, opening a secure messaging app. I gave her my number. If she calls, we move immediately. If she doesn't, he paused, considering. We watch. We wait. We make sure she has a way out when she's ready. Marcus sighed, recognizing the futility of further argument. You want surveillance on her apartment? Discreet surveillance. I want to know if Tom escalates. I want to know if she's in immediate danger. And Marcus? Rodwell's dark eyes met his second-in-commands. I want to know the second she reaches out. And the syndicate? Let me worry about Viktor Kozlov. A cold smile touched Rodwell's lips, the kind of smile that had earned him his reputation as one of the most dangerous men in the city. He's a businessman first. He'll understand that some things transcend politics. And if he doesn't? Rodwell looked back at the rain-streaked window, at the city spread out below him like a chessboard. Then he'll learn that there are some lines even I won't let him cross. Marcus gathered his files, pausing at the door. For what it's worth, boss, Sophia would be proud of what you're doing. After Marcus left, Rodwell returned to the window, his reflection staring back at him from the glass. Somewhere out there in the rain-soaked city, a young woman with frightened eyes was learning that hope could come from the most unexpected places. He'd wait. He'd watch. And when she was ready, if she was ready, he'd make sure James Tom learned what happened to men who thought they could hide their violence behind closed doors. Some things, Rodwell had learned, were worth going to war for. 4 days passed like walking through a minefield blindfolded. Each morning I woke with my muscles already tensed, listening to James's breathing beside me, trying to gauge his mood before he even opened his eyes. Each evening I prepared dinner with shaking hands, second-guessing every seasoning choice, every cooking temperature, knowing that anything could trigger an explosion. He hadn't touched me since the night at Montelukai's. Hadn't raised his voice. Hadn't grabbed my wrist or shoved me against a wall. The restraint was somehow worse than the violence, like watching a storm gather on the horizon, knowing it would break, but not knowing when. I'd checked the business card a dozen times, memorizing the number until I could recite it in my sleep. The black cardstock had started to show where along the edges from being handled, hidden, retrieved, hidden again. I kept it in different places, inside a tampon box, between the pages of a cookbook I never used, taped behind the bathroom mirror. Always moving it, always afraid James would find it during one of his searches through my things. On the 4th morning, James left early for a business meeting, without kissing me goodbye. The apartment felt different in his absence, larger somehow, as if the walls expanded when he wasn't there to fill every space with his presence. I made coffee and opened my laptop, intending to work on a logo design for a client, but my cursor kept drifting to the browser tab where our bank account sat bookmarked. I shouldn't have looked. I knew better than to look. But the fear that had been gnawing at me for weeks, the fear that James was hiding something, that the financial control was about more than just dominance, finally overcame my survival instinct. I logged into the joint account, scrolling through recent transactions. Groceries, utilities, my freelance deposits automatically transferred to James's private account like clockwork. Normal. Expected. Then I saw them. 3 wire transfers in the past week, each for $25,000 sent to accounts I didn't recognize. Cayman Islands. Luxembourg. Singapore. The amount staggered at irregular intervals, clearly designed to avoid automatic flagging. $75,000.
Gone.
My hands started shaking so badly, I had to set down my coffee mug before I dropped it. This wasn't normal spending. This wasn't even normal financial abuse. This was something else entirely, something that made the bruises on my wrists seem almost trivial by comparison. I heard his key in the lock. My laptop was still open, the bank account still displayed on the screen. I should have closed it immediately, should have cleared the browser history, should have pretended I'd been working on my design project. But my body had frozen, every instinct screaming danger, while my muscles refused to respond. James walked in carrying takeout bags, his expression pleasant. I brought lunch. That Thai place you like. He stopped, his gaze landing on my laptop screen. What are you doing? I was just... My voice came out thin and reedy. I was checking our balance. For groceries. He set the bags down with deliberate care, his movements suddenly precise and controlled. Close the laptop, Michelle. I closed it. My hands were still shaking. Stand up. I stood, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The apartment suddenly felt too small again, the walls contracting around us. James crossed the space between us in 3 strides. You were looking at my transactions. Our transactions, I corrected automatically, stupidly. It's a joint account. His hand shot out and grabbed my throat, slamming me backward into the wall with enough force that a framed photo fell and shattered on the floor. The impact drove the air from my lungs, and suddenly his face was inches from mine, his pupils blown wide with rage.
My
transactions. Each word was punctuated by his fingers tightening around my windpipe. You don't get to question where my money goes. You don't get to snoop through my business. You don't get to. James can't breathe. I clawed at his hand, my vision starting to gray at the edges. You think you're so fucking smart, don't you? Spittle flew from his lips as he shouted, his face contorted into something barely recognizable. Always questioning me, always doubting me, always trying to undermine me. He released my throat only to shove me hard toward the kitchen. I stumbled, catching myself on the counter, gasping for air. My throat felt crushed, every breath like swallowing broken glass. Those transfers are none of your goddamn business. He grabbed a glass from the counter and hurled it at the wall beside my head. It exploded into fragments, and I felt something sharp slice my cheek. That money is mine. I earn it, I manage it, and I sure as hell don't need my useless wife questioning how I spend it. I'm sorry. I choked out, but the apology only seemed to enrage him further. He advanced on me again, and this time I saw something in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Not just anger, but genuine intent to harm.
To really harm me.
I ran. My bare feet slipped on the hardwood as I sprinted down the hallway, his footsteps thundering behind me. The bathroom was closest. I threw myself inside and slammed the door, my fingers fumbling with the lock just as his weight crashed against the other side. The door shuddered but held. Open this fucking door, Michelle. His fist pounded against the wood, each impact making the frame tremble. Open it right now. I backed away from the door, my hand pressed against my throat where I could feel my pulse hammering beneath bruised skin. Blood dripped from the cut on my cheek, and I grabbed a towel to press against it with shaking hands. I'm warning you. Another blow, harder this time. The wood cracked slightly near the handle. You open this door in the next 10 seconds, or I swear to God. James, please. My voice was barely a whisper, raw and damaged. Please just calm down. Calm down? Calm down. His laugh was hysterical, unhinged. You violated my privacy. You went through my personal finances. And now you're hiding from me like I'm the bad guy. Another impact. The door frame splintered slightly. I'm going to count to 3, he said, his voice dropping to that terrifying whisper I'd learned to fear more than his shouting. 1. I looked around the bathroom frantically. No window. No other exit. Just white tile and chrome fixtures and the small cabinet under the sink where I kept. 2. My hidden phone. The old one I'd bought at a convenience store 6 months ago and kept charged, kept secret, kept for emergencies I'd prayed would never come. 3. His body slammed against the door with his full weight. The frame cracked audibly, the lock beginning to give way. I dropped to my knees and yanked open the cabinet under the sink, my hands scrambling past cleaning supplies until my fingers closed around the cheap smartphone taped to the back panel. James hit the door again. The wood around the lock was splintering, pieces falling to the tile floor. I pulled up the phone, my fingers slipping on the screen, blood from my cheeks smearing across the glass. And I dialed the number I'd memorized 4 days ago, the number that represented either salvation or just another kind of cage. The phone rang once. The bathroom door shuddered under another impact.
Twice.
Please, I whispered to no one, to everyone, to whatever God might be listening. Please answer.
3 times.
Then a voice, low and controlled. Michelle. He'd been waiting for my call. Michelle. His voice was exactly as I remembered it, low, controlled, absolutely certain. Like he'd been sitting by the phone waiting for this exact moment. My voice broke, barely a whisper through my damaged throat. He's going to kill me. Another crash against the door. The lock mechanism twisted visibly, screws loosening from the frame. Tell me where you are. Not a question. A command delivered with the kind of authority that made my scattered thoughts snap into focus. 2247 Riverside Apartments, Unit 603. The words tumbled out in a rush as James's fist punched through the door panel, creating a jagged hole near the handle. I scrambled backward, pressing myself against the bathtub. 6th floor, east side of the building, please. I'm already moving. I heard car doors slamming in the background, an engine roaring to life. 15 minutes, Michelle. Can you stay safe for 15 minutes? I don't. The door. He's breaking through. Listen to me. His voice cut through my panic like a blade through silk. Is there anything you can use to barricade the door? Anything heavy? My eyes swept the small bathroom.
Toilet. Sink.
Bathtub. Nothing movable, nothing useful. No, there's nothing. It's just a bathroom. James's arm thrust through the hole he'd created, his fingers groping for the lock from the inside. I watched in horror as his hand found the mechanism, started turning it. The vanity. I gasped, dropping the phone onto the tile and throwing my full weight against the bathroom cabinet. It didn't budge, bolted to the wall. It's attached, I can't. Michelle, pick up the phone. Rodwell's voice came through the speaker, calm and steady even as my world disintegrated. I grabbed it with blood-slick fingers. I need you to breathe. Can you do that for me? He's opening the lock. Then you jam it. Towel, toothbrush, anything. Shove it into the mechanism. Now. I snatched a hand towel and stuffed it desperately into the lock assembly just as James's fingers closed around it. The fabric wedged between the components, preventing it from turning completely. You fucking bitch. James roared, withdrawing his arm and slamming against the door again. The hinges groaned. Okay. I breathed, my back pressed against the door now, adding my weight to the compromised lock. Okay, I did it. Good. That's good, Michelle. 13 minutes now. Stay on the line with me. What if? My voice cracked. What if you don't make it in time? I will make it in time. The certainty in his voice was absolute. I heard him speaking to someone else. Rapid-fire instructions I couldn't quite catch. Then he was back. Tell me what he did to you. What? Your injuries. Tell me what happened. Another impact. The top hinge bent slightly, metal squealing. He choked me. My free hand went to my throat instinctively. Slammed me against the wall. Through a glass. It cut my face. I think he would have done worse if I hadn't run. You did the right thing running. His voice remained that impossible calm, an anchor in the chaos. You did exactly the right thing calling me. 11 minutes, Michelle. I saw his bank transfers. I whispered, not sure why I was telling him this, why it mattered now. $75,000 to offshore accounts. That's why he. We'll deal with that later. Something in his tone changed, hardened. Right now, I need you to focus on staying conscious and staying safe. Are you dizzy? Lightheaded? I assessed myself, the pounding in my head, the way the bathroom seemed to tilt slightly. A little. My throat. It's hard to breathe. That's normal after strangulation. Shallow breaths. Don't try to gulp air. I could hear traffic sounds through his phone now, horns blaring. He was driving fast. 9 minutes. James had stopped pounding. The sudden silence was somehow worse than the violence. Why did it stop? I whispered. He's thinking. Strategizing. Rodwell paused. Do you have a window in there? No, just. The fire alarm shrieked to life, the sound splitting through the apartment like a scream. Smoke, I choked out, seeing it curl under the bathroom door, thin and gray, but growing thicker. Oh God, he set something on fire. Stay low. Get in the bathtub, turn on the water, soak towels, and put them against the door gap. Rodwell's voice had taken on an edge now, the first hint of emotion breaking through his control. Marcus, call building security, fire department, yes, now. I threw myself into the bathtub, yanking the shower curtain down and turning the faucet on full blast. Water cascaded over me as I soaked every towel I could reach, stuffing them along the base of the door. The smoke was getting heavier, burning my already damaged throat. "I'm in the tub," I coughed. "The water's running." 7 minutes, Michelle. 7 minutes, and I'm there. His voice was fierce now, almost violent in its intensity. "You stay with me. You stay conscious."
Talk to me.
About what? The absurdity of the question made me want to laugh, but it came out as a sob. "Anything. Your sister Emma. When did you last speak to her?" "A year ago," James said. I coughed harder, smoke seeping through the towel barrier. "Said she was trying to turn me against him." "We'll call her."
After.
"You can call her from my car." He was making promises, building a future that existed past this moment, past this bathroom, past the smoke and fear. 5 minutes. The bathroom door was outlined in orange now. Whatever James had set on fire was close, getting closer. Rodwell. His name felt strange on my tongue, intimate despite never having said it aloud before. "If you don't make it." "I'm 4 minutes away, Michelle." 4 minutes. You've survived 3 years with him. You can survive 4 more minutes with me on the phone. "But if you don't, then my men will." Marcus is 2 minutes behind me. Building security is evacuating your floor. Fire department is 3 minutes out. You are not alone anymore. Do you understand? You are not alone. The words broke something in me. Tears streamed down my face, mixing with the shower water and blood. "Okay. 3 minutes. I'm in your building. I'm in the elevator. Stay low, keep breathing." Almost there. I could hear the elevator ding through the phone and through the bathroom door simultaneously. 2 minutes. Which apartment is yours from the elevator? Right side, 3rd door. I see it. There's smoke in the hallway. Fire's in your kitchen. I'm at your door now. An enormous crash echoed through the apartment, the front door being kicked in. "Michelle." Rodwell's voice, both through the phone and through the walls. "Where are you?" "Bathroom." I screamed with what was left of my voice. "Bathroom, end of the hall." Footsteps running. Male voices shouting. Then James's voice, high and panicked. "Get the fuck out of my house." The sound of a body hitting a wall. A grunt of pain that wasn't Rodwell's. Then hands pounding on the bathroom door. Different hands, controlled, purposeful. "Michelle," it's Rodwell. "I need you to move away from the door."
Can you do that?
I scrambled out of the bathtub, pressing myself against the far wall. One kick. The compromised door exploded inward, smoke billowing out as cool air rushed in. And there he was, dark hair wild, expensive suit soaked with water from the building's sprinklers that had activated, dark eyes scanning the room until they found me huddled against the wall. 15 minutes, he said, and something that might have been relief flickered across his stone-cut features. Right on time. Then he crossed the bathroom in 2 strides and lifted me out of hell. Rodwell's hands were surprisingly gentle as he wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, guiding me out of the smoke-filled bathroom. My legs trembled with each step, threatening to give out, but his arm around my waist kept me upright. "Easy," he murmured. "I've got you." The apartment looked like a war zone. The kitchen was engulfed in flames, black smoke billowing against the ceiling where the sprinklers fought a losing battle. My laptop lay shattered on the floor, surrounded by broken glass and overturned furniture. And in the center of it all, James knelt on the hardwood with his hands zip-tied behind his back, blood streaming from his nose, held in place by 2 men in dark suits who looked like they could break him without effort. James's eyes found mine, and even restrained, even bleeding, the rage in them made me flinch. "You fucking bitch," he spat, struggling against his restraints. "You called these thugs on me?" After everything I've done for you. Rodwell's body went rigid beside me. For a moment, I thought he might let go of me, might cross the room and finish what his men had started. Instead, his voice came out cold and precise as a scalpel. Marcus, get him out of here before I forget why we don't kill people in their own homes. The larger of the two men, Marcus, I realized, the one Rodwell had been talking to on the phone, hauled James to his feet with casual efficiency. Where do you want him? Somewhere he can think about his choices. Somewhere uncomfortable. Rodwell's dark eyes never left James's face. And make sure he understands that if he makes any attempt to contact Michelle, to file a police report, or to involve his syndicate friends, the next conversation will be significantly less pleasant. You can't do this. James's voice rose to a shout as Marcus dragged him toward the door. This is kidnapping. I'll have you arrested, You'll do nothing. Rodwell's voice cut through the threats like ice through flesh. Because you're a money launderer for the syndicate, and the moment you involve the police is the moment your employers learn you've been skimming from their accounts. Those offshore transfers Michelle found? I guarantee your bosses don't know about those. James's face went white. Marcus yanked him through the doorway as two more men entered, younger, efficient, carrying duffel bags. Gentlemen, Rodwell addressed them without looking away from me. 10 minutes. Documents, laptop if it's salvageable, clothing, medications, anything that can't be replaced. Move. They moved like a military unit, spreading through the apartment with practiced precision. I watched in stunned silence as they gathered my life into bags. My passport from James's locked desk drawer, my birth certificate, the external hard drive with all my design work, the few photographs I'd managed to keep from before the marriage. Your phone, Rodwell said quietly. The one you used to call me. Do you have another? I nodded mutely, pointing to my purse on the kitchen counter, miraculously untouched by the fire. One of the men retrieved it, extracting my regular phone and removing the SIM card with swift, practiced movements. He held up the cheap burner phone questioningly. That one comes with us, Rodwell confirmed. The other stays here. Let him wonder how she contacted the outside world. Fire trucks wailed in the distance, growing closer. The flames in the kitchen had spread to the curtains, and the smoke was getting thicker despite the sprinklers. Time to go, Marcus announced, returning without James. Building security is handling evacuation. Fire department is 2 minutes out. We need to be gone. Rodwell guided me toward the door, his hand steady on my back. I looked back once at the apartment that had been my prison for 3 years. The kitchen where I'd learned to cook exactly how James liked it. The living room where I'd made myself invisible. The bedroom where I'd lain awake counting his breaths. I felt nothing. Not relief, not grief. Just a vast, empty numbness. The elevator ride down was silent except for my ragged breathing. In the parking garage, a black SUV waited with tinted windows and engine running. Rodwell opened the back door and helped me inside, sliding in beside me as his men loaded bags into the trunk. Where are we going? My voice was barely a whisper, raw and damaged. Somewhere safe. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Somewhere he'll never find you. The SUV pulled out of the garage just as fire trucks screamed into the parking lot, lights painting the concrete walls in shades of red and blue. I watched the building disappear through the rear window, smoke pouring from a 6th-floor window that had been my cage. We drove for 20 minutes through parts of the city I didn't recognize. The buildings grew taller, more expensive, the streets cleaner. Finally, the SUV pulled into an underground garage beneath a building of steel and glass that looked like it cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. The loft was on the 15th floor. Rodwell unlocked the door and stepped aside, letting me enter first. I stopped just inside the threshold, my breath catching. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook the city, the view stretching for miles. Exposed brick walls, hardwood floors, modern furniture in shades of gray and cream. A kitchen with marble countertops. A bedroom visible through an open door, the bed pristine with white linens. Everything clean, beautiful, untouched. It's secure, Rodwell said, moving past me to check the windows. Keypad entry, security cameras on every floor, doorman downstairs who works for me. No one gets up here without clearance. How long? I asked, the words feeling foreign. How long can I stay? As long as you need. He turned to face me, and something in his expression softened. This isn't temporary, Michelle. This is yours until you're ready to figure out what comes next. A knock at the door made me jump. Rodwell opened it to admit a woman in her 50s carrying a medical bag, her salt and pepper hair pulled into a neat bun. Dr. Chun, Rodwell introduced. She's going to examine you, document your injuries. Everything will be photographed and recorded for legal purposes. Divorce proceedings, restraining orders, whatever you decide you need. Dr. Chen's smile was kind but professional. Hello, Michelle. Let's take care of you. The examination took 40 minutes. Photographs of the bruises on my wrists, my throat, the cut on my cheek. Gentle questions about pain levels, breathing difficulties, dizziness. A prescription for antibiotics to prevent infection, pain medication I probably wouldn't take. Her hands were steady and competent, her voice soothing, and for the first time since Rodwell had broken down that bathroom door, I felt tears building behind my eyes. You're going to be fine, Dr. Chen said, packing up her supplies. Physically, everything will heal. The strangulation caused some trauma to your larynx, but nothing permanent. Keep the wounds clean, take the antibiotics, and rest. The rest. She glanced at Rodwell, standing by the windows giving us privacy. The rest takes more time. After she left, Rodwell showed me how to work the door locks, the security system, the panic button installed beside the bed. He opened the refrigerator to show it fully stocked, pointed out towels in the bathroom, showed me the phone by the bed with his number on speed dial. I'll come back tomorrow, he said at the door. Unless you need me sooner. Any time, day or night, you call that number. Understood. I nodded, unable to form words around the lump in my throat. He paused, studying me with those dark, unreadable eyes. You're safe now, Michelle. I know you don't believe it yet, but you are. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving me alone in the beautiful, silent loft. I stood in the center of the living room for a long moment, listening to the absence of James's breathing, his footsteps, his voice. The city lights glittered through the windows, and somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Slowly, carefully, I walked to the couch and sat down. The leather was soft, expensive. No one would yell at me for sitting wrong. No one would criticize how I positioned the pillows. No one was here at all. The tears came then, not quiet tears, but great heaving sobs that tore through my damaged throat. I cried for the woman I'd been 3 years ago, for the time I'd lost, for the fear I'd lived with so long it had become normal. I cried because I was safe, and I cried because I didn't know how to be safe anymore. And when the tears finally stopped, I lay down on that expensive couch in that beautiful loft and slept without dreaming for the first time in years. Rodwell came to the safe house on the 3rd day, and I'd been expecting demands. Expectations. The bill for my rescue presented with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Instead, he knocked. It was such a small thing, standing outside the door to the loft he owned, waiting for permission to enter, but it made my throat tighten in a way that had nothing to do with the bruises still coloring my neck in shades of purple and green. Come in, I called, my voice still rough and damaged. He entered carrying a leather portfolio and 2 cups of coffee from the cafe 3 blocks over. The good one, not the chain. He set 1 cup on the table beside me, careful not to invade my space on the couch where I'd been staring at my laptop for the past hour without actually seeing it. "How are you feeling?" he asked, taking the armchair across from me rather than sitting beside me. Another small thing. Another choice that spoke louder than words. Like I got hit by a truck. I touched my throat self-consciously. But alive. "Thanks to you." "Thanks to you," he corrected. "You made the call." That took courage. I didn't feel courageous. I felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped everything vital from inside me and left only the shell. But I nodded anyway, wrapping my hands around the coffee cup for warmth. Rodwell opened the portfolio, his movements precise and businesslike. "I need to be honest with you about what happens next. You deserve to know exactly what world you've stepped into." My stomach clenched. Here it comes, I thought. The real price. "I'm not a good man, Michelle." His dark eyes met mine unflinching. "I run a criminal organization. We handle things the police won't or can't touch. We operate outside the law, and while I have rules, lines I won't cross, the work itself is illegal and dangerous." He paused, gauging my reaction. "People want me dead. Rival families, law enforcement, even some people within my own organization who think I'm too soft or too reckless. Being under my protection means you're also under that target. As opposed to being under James's fists?" The words came out sharper than I'd intended. "I'll take my chances." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe, or respect. "Your husband was laundering money for an organization called the Syndicate. They're powerful, well-connected, and they don't forgive what they consider betrayals. By extension, pulling you out means I've interfered with one of their people. So you started a war because of me." The guilt was immediate and crushing. "I started a war because James Tom is a piece of shit who beat his wife and set fire to his own apartment trying to kill her." Rodwell's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. "The Syndicate can take issue with that if they want. It won't change my decision." I stared at him, this dangerous man who'd kicked down a door to save someone he didn't know. "What do you want from me?" "Information if you have it. Anything about James's work, his contacts, his routines. Bank account details, names, addresses, anything that might be useful." He leaned forward slightly. "In exchange, you get comprehensive protection, a top divorce attorney who will expedite your case, and complete financial independence. Your freelance income will go directly into an account only you can access. No strings, no control. Just safety." That's it? Just information? It seemed too simple, too clean. "That's it." He pulled out several documents. "These are contracts making everything official. Protection agreement, financial arrangement, attorney retainer. You'll notice there's no clause binding you to me or my organization beyond the exchange of information. You're free to leave whenever you want. Free to refuse to answer questions. Free to change your mind about all of this." I took the papers with shaking hands, scanning the dense legal language. Everything was exactly as he'd said. No hidden clauses, no traps. No fine print that would lock me into something I didn't understand. "Why?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Why are you doing this?" Rodwell was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "Because someone should have done it for someone I loved, and no one did. Because I can. Because it's the right thing to do." He met my eyes again. "Take your time reading those. No rush. I'll be here when you're ready." Over the following week, I began to understand what freedom actually felt like. Rodwell had contacted my clients, explaining I'd had a family emergency and would be working remotely for the foreseeable future. He hadn't told them where I was or what had happened, just ensured my projects remained secure and my income steady. When my first payment came through, I stared at the bank statement for 20 minutes, unable to believe that money with my name on it was actually, truly mine. His visits became regular but never intrusive. He'd knock, wait for permission, and settle into that same armchair with updates on my divorce proceedings or news about James's arrest for arson and assault. He never stayed longer than an hour. Never asked personal questions that weren't directly relevant. Never made me feel like I owed him anything beyond the information I'd already provided about James's offshore accounts. But then the small things started appearing. A copy of my favorite novel, one I'd mentioned offhand during a conversation about what I'd been reading before James had started monitoring my purchases. A heating pad when he noticed me wincing from residual pain. A business card for a therapist who specialized in trauma with a note that said only, "When you're ready. No pressure." I called the therapist. Dr. Sarah Chun had kind eyes and didn't push when I spent the first 3 sessions mostly silent, just sitting in her office learning how to exist in a room with another person without calculating threat levels. She explained that healing wasn't linear, that some days I'd feel strong, and others I'd wake up convinced I'd made everything worse by leaving. She was right. There were mornings I checked the locks 6 times before I could breathe properly. Afternoons where I'd hear footsteps in the hallway, and my body would flood with panic before remembering James was in jail, awaiting trial. Nights where I'd dream of smoke and splintering doors, and wake up gasping. But there were also moments of unexpected lightness. The first time I ordered takeout without asking permission. The day I bought a book simply because I wanted to read it. The afternoon I realized I'd gone 3 full hours without thinking about James at all. Rodwell noticed these shifts, though he never commented directly. Instead, he'd ask about my projects, my therapy, whether I'd talked to my sister yet. Emma and I had reconnected tearfully over a video call, and she'd been horrified to learn what I'd endured, furious with herself for not pushing harder when James had cut me off. "You couldn't have known," I'd told her, the same thing people kept telling me. He was good at hiding it. One evening, 6 weeks after the rescue, Rodwell brought dinner, real food from a restaurant, not just coffee. He set it on the table, then hesitated. "Can I ask you something personal?" My heart rate kicked up instinctively. "Okay. Are you afraid of me?" The question caught me off guard. I looked at him, really looked at him, taking in the controlled posture, the careful distance he always maintained, the way he telegraphed his movements like someone trying not to spook a wounded animal. "No," I said slowly, realizing it was true. "I'm not afraid of you. But you were. At first. At first, I was afraid of everything." I picked at the food he'd brought. "You saved my life, but you're still a man with power over me. You control where I live, my safety, whether James can find me. That's terrifying, even when the person wielding that power is kind about it. And now I'm starting to understand the difference between protection and possession." I met his dark eyes. "You've given me more freedom in 6 weeks than I had in 3 years of marriage. You knock before entering. You ask instead of demand. You've never once made me feel like I owe you anything beyond what we agreed to." I paused. "That's not control, Rodwell. That's respect." Something in his expression shifted, softened, almost. "You deserve respect, Michelle. You always did. I'm just sorry it took so long for someone to show you that." We ate in comfortable silence after that, and for the first time since the night at Montelukai's, I felt something dangerous and fragile unfurling in my chest. Hope. The panic attack hit me on a Tuesday afternoon, 8 weeks into my new life. I'd been working on a logo design when an email notification appeared. My divorce attorney confirming James had signed the settlement papers from jail. It was good news. Final.
Clean.
Everything I'd wanted. So, why couldn't I breathe? My hands started shaking. The walls of the beautiful loft seemed to contract, the expensive furnishings transforming into gilded bars. I was in a cage again, a nicer cage, a safer cage, but still a cage. And Rodwell held the key. When he arrived that evening with Thai food and updates on the syndicate situation, I didn't let him pass the threshold. "I need to leave," I said without preamble. He went very still, the takeout bags frozen halfway to the table. "Leave the safe house? Leave all of this?" I gestured around the loft, my voice rising with an edge of hysteria I couldn't quite control. "I need to know I can. I need to know that if I wanted to walk out that door right now and disappear, you'd let me. Michelle. Would you?" I demanded, my fear transmuting into anger, safer than vulnerability, easier than admitting the truth. "Would you actually let me go? Or would you send Marcus to follow me? Put surveillance on wherever I went? Tell yourself it's for my protection while you track my every move." "Of course I would let you go." His voice was calm, but something flickered in his dark eyes. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. "You're not a prisoner here." "Aren't I?" The words burst out, 3 years of learned helplessness and fresh terror colliding. "You control where I live. You control my safety. You bought me clothes and furniture and kindness, and now I don't know if I'm staying because I want to or because I'm too afraid to find out what happens if I leave. So find out." He set the food down carefully, his movements deliberate. "Walk out the door, Michelle.
Right now."
No one will stop you." I stared at him, my heart hammering. "Just like that? Just like that?" He pulled out his phone, tapped something, then held it up so I could see the screen, a banking app showing an account with my name. "Your account. $78,000 from your freelance work over the past 8 weeks, plus the settlement money from James that came through last week. It's yours. All of it. The passwords, the access codes, everything. You can transfer it, withdraw it, disappear with it. I won't stop you." My breath caught. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you need to know you have a choice." He pocketed the phone. "The difference between me and James isn't that I'm kinder or more patient. It's that I understand you're a person, not a possession. You have autonomy, free will, the right to leave even if it's not what I want." "And what do you want?" The question came out smaller than I intended. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Then, I want you to stay. But I want you to stay because you choose to, not because you're afraid or dependent or trapped. Real safety, real freedom, means having the power to leave and choosing not to use it." Something in my chest loosened slightly. I don't know how to trust that. "I know." He moved to leave, respecting the space I'd demanded. "For what it's worth, I don't blame you." "Wait." The word stopped him at the door. "Why do you do this?" "The protection, the rules about consent and choice. It's not just about Sophia, is it?" His jaw tightened at her name, but he didn't deflect. Instead, he turned back to face me fully. "Can I sit?" I nodded, and we settled into our usual positions, him in the armchair, me on the couch, that careful distance between us. "Sophia died because I was too arrogant to see the signs," he began, his voice rough with old pain. "Because I thought I knew better than she did about her own danger. When she told me she was scared, I told her what to do instead of listening to what she needed. I made decisions for her, even good-intentioned ones, and in doing that I took away her agency." He met my eyes. "She died feeling powerless.
Trapped."
And I've spent every day since trying to make sure no one else feels that way because of me. So you gave me all the power instead," I said slowly, understanding dawning. "The contracts with escape clauses. The bank account I control. The constant asking permission. You're overcompensating. Maybe. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Or maybe I learned that the only way to truly protect someone is to give them the tools to protect themselves. I thought about that, about the difference between James's suffocating control and Rodwell's careful distance. About the way James had stripped away my choices while Rodwell had systematically handed them back to me, even when it meant risking that I'd choose to leave. I'm not her, I said quietly. Sophia. I'm not a second chance to save her. No, you're not. His gaze was steady, honest. You're Michelle. And somewhere along the way, these past 8 weeks, you stopped being someone I was protecting and became someone He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. Someone you what? Someone I care about. The admission hung between us, vulnerable and raw. Not as a project or a way to atone for past failures. Just as yourself. Your sharp humor when you're not terrified. The way you bite your lip when you're designing. How you've started singing in the shower when you think no one can hear. He shook his head. I know the timing is terrible. I know you're still healing. But you asked what I want, and I want to be honest. My heart was doing complicated things in my chest. I care about you too. That's part of why I'm so scared. Because caring about me means choosing danger. Because caring about anyone means vulnerability, and I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. I pulled my knees to my chest. With James, I thought love meant sacrifice. Surrender. Making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. And now here you are, this dangerous man with blood on his hands, and somehow you make me feel like I can be bigger. Stronger. Like my choices matter. They do matter. But what if I'm just replacing one dependency with another? The fear spilled out, honest and ugly. What if I only feel safe with you because you've created this bubble, and outside of it I'm still just broken? Then we find out. He leaned forward, his intensity focused entirely on me. Michelle, you want to test your independence?
Go.
Take the money, rent an apartment across town, live completely separate from me and my world for a month. 2 months. However long you need. And if at the end of that time you still want nothing to do with me, I'll respect that. But if you want to come back, not because you need protection, but because you choose to, I'll be here. I stared at him, this impossible man offering me exactly what I needed even though it might cost him everything. You'd really let me go. I really would. He stood, preparing to leave, for real this time. The door's unlocked, Michelle. It's always been unlocked. You're the one who has to decide whether to walk through it. After he left, I sat in the silence for a long time, my mind churning. I thought about James's locked doors and hidden phones. About Rodwell's knock before entering and bank accounts in my name. About fear-based dependence versus choice-based commitment. Then I thought about who I wanted to be, not who I'd been as James's victim, but who I was becoming in the space Rodwell had helped create. I picked up my phone and called him. I'm staying, I said when he answered. Not because I'm afraid to leave or because I owe you. I'm staying because I want to. Because for the first time in years, I'm making a choice based on what I want, not what I'm afraid of. That's the gift you gave me, Rodwell, not safety from James, but the courage to choose for myself. The silence on the other end lasted 3 heartbeats. Then, are you sure? I'm sure. Come back. Bring the Thai food. Let's eat dinner and talk about something other than fear and survival. What do you want to talk about? I smiled, feeling something warm and certain settling in my chest. Everything. I want to talk about everything. When he returned 20 minutes later, I opened the door before he could knock. It was time to stop being afraid of my own choices. The FBI agent's name was Sarah Chen, and she had kind eyes that didn't match the weight of what she was asking me to do. We've been building a case against the syndicate for 3 years, she said, her hands folded on the table between us in Rodwell's secure conference room. Your husband's financial records, the ones you flagged that night, they're the missing piece. But we need testimony. We need someone who can explain the pattern, verify the transfers, put a human face on the money laundering operation. I sat with my hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had long since gone cold, Rodwell a silent presence beside me. We'd been living in careful peace for 3 months now, me healing in his safe house, him giving me space to rebuild myself piece by piece. The bruises had faded. The nightmares came less frequently. I'd started taking clients again, rented a small studio apartment with money I'd earned myself. But this was different. If I testify, I said slowly, the syndicate will know I was the one who helped build the case against them. Agent Chen didn't sugarcoat it.
Yes.
You'd be a target. We can offer witness protection relocation.
No.
The word came out sharper than I intended. I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding. I just need to know, would my testimony actually matter? Would it be enough? Combined with the financial evidence and testimony from other witnesses, yes. It would be enough to dismantle their money laundering operation and implicate at least 15 members of their organization, including Viktor Kozlov himself. She paused. It would also ensure James Tom receives the maximum sentence for both his criminal activities and the documented abuse. I looked at Rodwell then. He'd been quiet throughout the meeting, but I could feel the tension radiating from him, the careful control he was exercising to let me make this decision without his influence. What do you think? I asked him. His dark eyes met mine, and something complicated moved behind them. I think Agent Chen should give us the room. She stood without protest, closing the door quietly behind her. Rodwell turned in his chair to face me fully. You don't need my permission, Michelle. You don't need my approval. This is your choice. I know that. I'm asking what you think anyway. He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as he chose his words carefully. I think testifying puts you in danger. Real danger that even I might not be able to completely protect you from. The syndicate has long memories and longer reach. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and took my hand. But I also think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met, and if you want to use your voice to burn down the organization that enabled your abuse, then I'll be right there beside you when you do it. Even if it makes things harder for you? For your family? Especially then. His thumb traced circles on my palm. You've spent 3 years making yourself smaller to accommodate someone else's violence. If you want to take up space now, take up all the space you need. I'll handle the consequences. I looked down at our joined hands, his scarred and marked with the ink of his world, mine still bearing the faint shadows of old bruises. 2 people from completely different lives, connected by a moment of recognition across a restaurant table. I want to testify, I said. I want him to know that he didn't break me. I want Viktor Kozlov to know that the woman they all ignored, the one they thought was too scared to matter, I want them to know I mattered enough to bring them down. Rodwell's grip on my hand tightened. Then that's what we'll do. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, but the weight of eyes on me made it feel vast and exposed. I sat in the witness box with my hands folded in my lap, my voice steady as I walked the prosecutor through the timeline. The wire transfers. The offshore accounts. The pattern of James's increasing desperation as the amounts grew larger and the scrutiny intensified. James sat at the defense table, his blonde hair perfectly styled, his suit immaculate. He looked like the successful businessman he'd always pretended to be. But when our eyes met, I didn't feel the old fear. I felt nothing but a cold, clear resolve. Mrs. Tom, the prosecutor said gently, can you tell the court what happened the night you discovered these transactions? I took a breath and told them everything. The choking, the glass that cut my face, the fire he'd set to smoke me out of the bathroom, the 15-minute phone call that saved my life. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. The defense attorney tried to shake my testimony, tried to paint me as a scorned wife seeking revenge. But I'd spent 3 months preparing for this moment, 3 months learning to trust my own voice again. I didn't waver. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. James received 12 years for money laundering and racketeering, an additional 5 for aggravated assault and attempted murder. The judge's words echoed through the courtroom. Domestic violence, when combined with organized criminal activity, represents a particularly egregious abuse of power that this court will not tolerate. My divorce was finalized the following week. I signed the papers in my lawyer's office, a lawyer I'd hired myself, paid for with my own money, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. Not closure exactly, but freedom. The legal, binding kind that said I would never belong to James Tom again. 6 months later, Rodwell and I walked into Montelukai's on a cool autumn evening. The maitre d' recognized us immediately, his professional composure slipping just slightly as he led us not to separate tables, but to one table set for 2. The same table where James had gripped my wrist and told me I was worthless. The same table where Rodwell had first seen me. But everything else was different. I wore a emerald green dress I'd chosen myself, my hair styled the way I liked it, my confidence no longer something I had to fake. Rodwell sat beside me, not across from me, not opposite me, beside me where partners sat. Equals. You didn't have to bring me here, I said as the waiter poured wine into our glasses. We could have gone anywhere. I know. Rodwell's hand found mine on the table between us. No longer hiding, no longer secret. But I wanted you to see it again from this side. Wanted you to know that places can be reclaimed, that memories can be rewritten. The waiter set down our appetizers and disappeared with practiced discretion. I looked at the white tablecloth, pristine and unmarred, no crimson wine spreading like blood, no violence lurking beneath the surface of civility. Just clean linen and good food, and a man who'd taught me that protection didn't require possession, that strength could coexist with gentleness, that I could choose danger with dignity over safety without autonomy. "What are you thinking?" Rodwell asked, his thumb tracing familiar circles on my palm. I smiled, a real smile, the kind that came from somewhere deep and genuine. "I'm thinking about how I used to sit here feeling invisible. How I thought no one saw me. No one cared enough to look. And now I know I was wrong." I turned my hand over, lacing my fingers through his. Someone was looking. Someone saw me exactly when I needed to be seen. "I'll always see you, Michelle." His voice was low, meant only for me. "For the rest of my life, I'll make sure you're seen." The restaurant continued its elegant performance around us, the clink of crystal, the murmur of conversation, the soft music that made everything feel like a dream. But I wasn't dreaming anymore. I was awake, alive, and sitting beside someone who'd helped me remember that survival wasn't the same as living. I lifted my wine glass, and Rodwell lifted his to meet it. "To new beginnings," I said. "To choices," he countered. "And to the woman brave enough to make them." Our glasses touched with a soft chime, and I drank to the life I'd chosen, complicated and dangerous, and absolutely, gloriously mine. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Michelle stood where she hadn't dared to stand before, in the light. She had earned her degree, finalized her freedom, and used her voice to dismantle the operation that had enabled her abuser. That evening, she and Rodwell returned to the restaurant, Rossi's. They sat at the corner table, but the atmosphere was completely changed. The dread was replaced by a quiet, fierce peace. She was no longer facing him across a battlefield of conflict, but sitting side by side, their hands intertwined on the white tablecloth, a symbol of partnership, not opposition. "To new beginnings," Rodwell said, raising his glass. "And to the woman who chose to stay when running would have been easier." Michelle's voice was clear, the voice of the woman she had fought to become. "To the man who gave me choices," she countered. "And to building something better than what came before." They clinked glasses and drank. Outside, the city lights reflected off the wet pavement. It was raining, just like that first night she had accepted his card, but now the sound was soothing instead of ominous. Michelle looked out at the world she had re-entered, not as a victim seeking shelter, but as a survivor. She was worthy. She was strong. The path ahead was dangerous, perhaps, but it was a danger she had chosen, built on respect, choice, and the unconditional freedom to be herself. Thank you for following Michelle's journey from silence to strength. If her story resonated with you, show your support. Like this video to help others who need to hear this message find it. Comment below and tell us what you would have done in Michelle's situation, or share your thoughts on Rodwell's moral code. And finally, subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you don't miss the next powerful story of survival and transformation.